Good afternoon. I am Anto Budiarjo. Welcome to Monday Live. This is something that we do every Monday afternoon at 3 p.m. Eastern to figure out the future of smart buildings. The profiles of the panelists are on mondaylive.org if you want to see who we are. Just a reminder that views expressed here are personal, not of any company or organization, and please do use the Zoom tools to chat with us, and we want to make this as interactive as possible. This slide deck is on mondaylive.org if you want to follow any of the links that we talk about in the opening sessions, in the opening parts of this. So our theme for this month is clarity. We're trying to see if we have clarity, having spent a year and a half talking about smart buildings. So I think there's some clarity that that's starting to sort of emerge. So we'll continue that one more week today. So today, after our normal news and trends, we're going to be joined by two guests, Brian Turner and Scott Cochrane. We're very much looking forward to this conversation. They're great thought leaders and influencers in the industry, so looking forward to that. But before we get into that, hand it over to Ken initially. What's going on, Ken?
Thanks, Anto. Okay, we've got our issue online. Basically, we're creating clarity, or we're trying to, and we're finding that a lot about creating clarity is just basically defining the change. And so we ended up writing an article, creating clarity in the face of change. We're hard at getting our December issue online. Will come on in a couple of days. I think the Thanksgiving turkey ate a few of my articles and interviews, but they're slowly coming in, so should be able to get it together. Vetting Vegas is our theme. I think we're all kind of just thinking, what is this? I think Chicago not happening left a giant hole in the industry, and we're trying to fill that hole. And there's still a lot of questions to happen, but I think it's going to be a great event. Certainly the first face-to-face major event of 2022. And we've got our free sessions there. It's our 22nd year of presenting sessions at AHR. So it's been a while. Part of that theme, I've got some of the articles coming in. I got a great one from Anto, anticipating the game changing at AHR Expo. Basically chats a bit and brings the messages from Monday Live, the consortium, and the stack, takes those items and gives it a little more insight. And actually some new stuff happening with BACnet is inside that article. Brian is going to lead our session on open, a discussion on the future of building controls, and Brad is helping him out with that, and some of the other younger contributing editors that we have. Should be always an interesting session. In the past, it's been a room full of folks basically sitting in the aisles and stuff. It's amazing how well that one is usually attended. We have an article just came in from Scott, the next BAS divergence. Gives you a little insight into what he's thinking. We also thank Scott for taking over the on-site duties of pulling together automated building sessions in Vegas. And we have an opening session, navigating to smart, sustainable buildings. BAS. And then BAS has gone IP, and MS practices, OT networks deployed. I think we're going to get a little bit insight into that today. And MSI best practices, platform wars, and dynamic dynasties. So you can see this is all kind of flowing. I also thank everybody on the Monday Live for the support of the education sessions. Almost everybody on the screen is involved in some way. There's a haystack event as well. Mark is running the collaboratory and has a new format and some new people, put some fresh blood into it. I'm quite excited. It's getting rid of the old guy and getting some new blood into some of the stuff we've done for automated buildings, education sessions. Back to you, Anto.
Thank you. Thanks, Ken. That I think we're all looking forward to Las Vegas. So moving on to Mark, talk about security.
Yeah, so again, obviously security within our environment, in the built environment, is with us each and every day. And this particular article just caught my attention in EE Times. Is it time to regulate the IoT once and for all? Which led me to thinking is it time in our industry now for more oversight when it comes to cybersecurity and the built environment? And again, while for the most part, I think, at least as I see it, all of us in the business, we take a volunteer approach to cyber. In other words, we choose to do certain things, follow certain guidelines, embrace it full. Some just embrace it barely at all, some not at all, or whatever. So at this point, it's been volunteer up until now, except in certain places. Again, you'll always have those exceptions. So I guess as we approach 2022, is it time for more oversight? And especially now, it's not only the ransomware and all the things that we see, and we've seen that whole increase in these issues, but really now the whole data privacy and the privacy side of this is really now, I'm seeing, becoming much more in conversation, especially in the C-suite. So it's a good article. And again, I think it's just something to keep in the back of our minds as we're searching for clarity and as we approach 2022. Back to you.
Hey, before you move on, Mark, when I see that headline, it's time to regulate the IoT once for all. What occurs to me is like regulating IoT is akin to regulating poetry or art. I understand the logic of cybersecurity. California is 2 years ahead. They've already mandated cybersecurity for certain things. But man, this headline scares me. Regulating, is it time to regulate poetry? So I say no.
Good.
Okay, that's one vote. Okay, let's move on. I'm sure we'll come back to
Bill,
this.
put Bill back in the closet. No, I'm just kidding. I'm kidding you. I'm kidding you.
All right, John, deja vu.
Yeah, that's my theme for the week. For most people know, we started this back in when the pandemic impacted industry and society and everything. And, now, we have the new OVE variant, which is easier to pronounce than the actual name. But it's just, the lack of clarity, I think is just having a wide effect on people. I thought here were the 4 scenarios that one writer said. The downside is it evades immunity. Severe is it's more deadly as well. False alarm, no significant impact, and upside, more transmissible but less severe disease. But nobody knows as we're entering in the end of the year and the beginning of next year. So it just seemed like a little bit of deja vu. And the stats I thought were interesting. It's been a while since I'd seen, the stats that we're over 5 million dead worldwide. So let's see what happens next and how it might affect some of the things we think we're going to be doing in 22.
Certainly here in Europe, John, it's beginning to look like more between 3 and 4 than it is 1 and 2.
Yeah. So John, I just literally read an article this afternoon. The South African doctor who raised the alarm about the Omicron variant has now reported the symptoms are unusual but mild.
Yeah.
Okay.
So there you go.
All right. Back to you.
Okay, thank you. Anno.
Sure. This is not clarity, I guess, anti-clarity in some ways. For those of you who see a lot of fuss and carry on about ESG in the marketplace, there's a lot of noise about that. A lot of people are talking about the ESG happening in the market. This is an article by Joel. If you follow the Green Biz guy, he puts out some really interesting articles. He did a nice article on why he thinks ESG will still be in the wild west in 2022. You guys can read as much as I can. I like the last point, which I put in bold for you, Jim Lee. Sustainable finance is still have been long and remain in the Wild West. The whole issue about financing, how do you finance sustainability, ESG initiatives, and he kind of highlighted that as well. So a bit of a projection from Joel on where ESG is a thing. It's definitely a focus of people, but where it is, how it is there's still a long way from clarity in any real context.
Or one could argue the lack of clarity is some level of clarity.
There you go. First of all, you have to know what you don't know.
There you go. Thank you. I saw this over last week. This is kind of a strange problem to have, that wind power is getting too cheap. So say manufacturers of wind power equipment. I'm not quite sure what to make of that. And the other thing is the Omicron that John brought up. Again, I'm not 100% sure to what degree we should worry about that, but these are the two things that I've been tracking.
Is it that the equipment on the wind turbines are too cheap, or the power that they generate becomes too inexpensive?
The power that they generate to become too inexpensive, which means that it doesn't justify the investment to build expensive turbines. It's kind of a weird situation.
Yeah.
I mean, you see the same thing in oil as price goes down and so forth. That's all dependent on the price per barrel.
Yeah.
Well, that's what happened with shale oil here in US or in Texas, right? Shale oil got pushed out of the marketplace when OPEC drove the price down.
Yep. Yep. So moving on, any other thoughts before we move on?
I kind of was just interested in, there seems to be a lot more background noise and activity with WeWork again. I think people are still working out the whole hybrid thing. I mean, talking to my kids and some of the younger generation, they're all saying, well, we don't want to go in Monday and Friday, but the middle of the week's okay, which means there's no space in the office on Wednesday and it's empty on Monday and Fridays, so you kind of begin to think, okay, how is this really going to shape out once people really do work out what to do? I mean, it seems amazing that someone hasn't come up with the idea saying, yeah, you can have a hybrid working solution. You can work at home for 2 or 3 days, but one of those days has to be a Monday or a Friday, and they have to be consecutive or something just to actually level out the occupation of the buildings. But I think WeWork seem to be making a lot more background noise now in terms of what they're doing to actually get some sort of resurgence in that, their office space and their kind of offer, which is interesting.
Hey, Roger, we've got a solution for that, so I'll ping you later.
Okay.
That sounds more like advocating for a shorter work week than worrying about pandemic spread.
Take a look at the poll I posted earlier this morning on my LinkedIn page about hybrid, and is it causing a rift between the company and the employee? Interesting percentages when you see it on there. And respond. If you haven't responded, I encourage people to respond.
Just to build on Scott's point, because I was going to say, I know JLL and CBRE, the big guys, they're responding to the WeWorks model as well, right? They're putting together similar solutions. So yeah, it is a thing that they're working out how to respond to it.
I think it's still not. If there's a stuff, I don't think there's any clarity on it yet, and I think it's still going to be another year, 18 months before we actually know where that all sits.
Okay. Right, so let's move on. Just a reminder, this is the last week of November, so we're going to start December. We have a bit of a soft theme. Just we want to wrap up the year. It's been obviously a long and very difficult year. We're going to have 2 shows on the 6th and on the 13th. On the 6th, we're actually going to be sort of spending quite a bit of time back on the Smarter Stack and have the members of One Monday Live opine on each one of that. And on the 13th, we're going to have sort of a holiday party kind of ish, Monday Live holiday party kind of a thing. We want you to participate and chime in on your thoughts on next year and also what you've learned this year. So those are kind of our thoughts. And then after that, we're going to go dark for the rest of the year.
And part of that, let me remind everybody, part of that requirement for that last one is you need to bring your favorite alcoholic beverage and show everybody that you are having some sips of your favorite alcoholic beverage at that time.
Just a sip though, because it may be in the middle of people's workday.
Who cares?
Well, it could be tea.
We'll take your share. It's evening here.
Just
Okay.
ship it over to Roger.
Go to ship it over.
Yeah, he'll try it all out for us.
Okay, so I'm going to bring in our two. Sorry?
No, I'm good.
All right, I'm going to bring in our two guests, Brian Turner and Scott Cochrane. Where are you, Scott? Cochrane, thank you. Here you go. I think I have the right people. Scott and Brian, welcome to Monday Live. If you can, here you go. Hey, Brian.
How are you guys?
Pretty good. I'm not sure either of you need much introduction, but I think we should give an opportunity for both Brian and Scott to introduce themselves briefly, just in case there's anybody who's been on the moon lately or something.
Anto, could you stop sharing?
Yeah. Sorry. There you go. Brian, do you want to start, and then Scott?
Sure. I'm Brian Turner, CEO of Billings IoT. We are a software provider and master system integrator.
Scott?
Scott Cochrane, president of Cochrane Supply and Engineering, and we're a distributor of building automation systems and technology.
Great. So we've seen you at AHR and other sort of conferences when we're having conferences, and there are a number of sort of subjects that the team thought would be sort of really sort of good to get your perspective. One of them, let's sort of jump into this, is sort of the notion of a converged network. I think there's some difference in opinions in terms of whether the infrastructure, the network infrastructure for BAS should be converged, fully converged with IT, meaning running in the same cabling infrastructure, or whether they should be separate. And I've heard, I think a lot of us have heard the two of you opine slightly differently on that. Do you want to start on that? I don't know who wants to start on that.
I'll start. Brian always likes it when I start.
There you go.
So like 2 summers ago, all the BAS manufacturers pretty much came out with IP-based BAS controllers. And when they did that, the systems that we were designing went from like serial to Ethernet based. And as we started to see these designs be implemented and talk to other people in the building space about what these designs mean to the systems and the buildings, what we quickly realized is that before we were coming into the facility and the facility IT group and asking for a little bit of help with a couple IP drops. Well, now we're coming in and we're talking about a very large IP network now to be incorporated into a business network. And with that, we saw a quick departure from that mentality within, the MEPs and the BAS space, because the owner space certainly was not ready for us to come in and change our request from 2 IPs to 300, if that makes sense, from their IT departments. And as such, that became unrealistic to be put into the install as, a little arrow that said, connect to the owner's network. Whew, yeah, that was bad design by the MEPs, right? Especially when now we have hundreds of IP controls. So it was 2 summers ago, we got the designs in. This summer, the projects went in, they were put in. We saw a lot of the designs go with the IP infrastructure as a part of the BAS scope of work, put in by BAS companies, and those jobs went well. And we've heard a lot of very good things from contractors in terms of the benefits of IP-based systems versus serial systems. And so going forward, you know, the train is moving faster and more IP-based systems for BAS. Sorry, that was my fault. And so with that, you know, like to me, the train has left the station. And really the business IT departments within the buildings will still be involved, but we're not going to be connecting to their networks like we were before, certainly. And I guess I'll open that up to Brian then.
So I don't know, maybe I'll say something controversial, make people think I hate Scott again. I'll say some of what Scott says is to me is dangerous. And it goes back to, you know, Mark's opening thing about cybersecurity. This isn't just about, you know, pulling cable or even managing a segment of network. It's really about understanding that every device that we connect that controls something that can be hacked or can be compromised in some way is important to be managed properly. And I just don't believe that the message that Scott puts out about who is responsible for that is actually sustainable. I don't think that cybersecurity or network management of IP networks is a part-time job. I think it's a full-time job for a company who lives and breathes that part of the world. And so I think where Scott and I have debated over the last few years is around that aspect itself. I mean, certainly we could say physically, or hey, you know, we could have a BAS trunk that's either virtually segmented, physically segmented, you know, whatever. I don't really care. I mean, there's lots of solutions and examples of where all sorts of different physical infrastructures have worked well for IoT or integrated building management systems. But really it comes down to who's managing it and who's providing the cybersecurity around it. And I don't think that MSIs even, you know, and we're an MSI, and we've actually gone down the path of hiring or buying. We actually bought a managed IT company. And I just don't believe that even with the work we've done and the infrastructure and the development that we've done on cyber means that we are capable of really taking over all of it. Having a great understanding of it, I think, is critical. So a lot of what Scott is saying from the responsibility of the MSI and controls contractors need to have a much stronger understanding of what it takes to secure these networks, install them, understand how they're so much different than a serial network ever was. I think that's all valid. I think people do have to be much smarter at that. I think they do have to be capable of installing, because I think when you talk about a normal construction project, the people that are responsible for cyber or real IT, they're not even involved until, you know, we're about to take occupancy or sometimes post occupancy. And so I think there's a lot of validity to what Scott's saying about, you know, people need to be able to understand how these networks get installed, what the physical capabilities of these networks are, how to actually punch down, you know, Cat6 cabling, how to understand the limitations of them, to understand, you know, how to explain to an IT group, you know, why, you know, daisy chaining Ethernet might be applicable and a good solution for IoT space. So I don't think this is an easy one to have clarity on, because I think that there are many different things. Even in our IBCon discussion, you know, if I think who you're talking about and the size of organization you're talking about matters a lot in this discussion, because a lot of times, you know, the examples that Scott might have brought up is, hey, you know, if I'm dealing with a small school district or a small property management firm that doesn't really have sophisticated IT, and so we end up bringing that to them, versus, you know, if you're dealing with a multinational, you know, corporate enterprise that's got really good enterprise IT, you've got to work with them because they're not going to just give up that cyber side. So I don't think this is a clear one, other than to say you have to be open-minded to all of it, and you have to be intelligent enough to be able to have the conversation with the client and with the integrator, depending on who they are.
I don't think Brian and I are as far apart as maybe people think. Because ask Bill, I'm into cybersecurity. I'm into security. I mean, never let a tech show up at a job without a TOSI box. That's what I always say, right? I mean, if you're going to remote connect, I mean, at least put this thing in before you do, right? No, Brian, I agree with a lot of the things that Brian said, and cybersecurity will continue to be a challenge, right? We as like in terms of the BAS market, I don't think we have the budget for cybersecurity yet. I think Brian or I should write like a Niagara virus, and that will kick up a lot of security budgets real quick. You know, there's just sometimes you got to create the need if it's not there. I don't know, because to this date, while our tech, you know, we do tech support for over 500 different contractors now that we do direct phone support for Niagara and other systems for. We get calls consistently that people have hacked into an owner's network through like their BAS supervisor server sitting unprotected on the internet, right? Which was set up by the IT department of the end user, and they opened the ports and they gave them the room on the server and all that. So like I think the bigger issue for the BAS industry is we as an industry have to become like IP experts overnight. And it's not just Brian and I or the people on this call. It's the MEPs, it's the temperature control contractors, and most importantly, the facility managers, okay? Like my premise of getting away from business IT networks is not just to get away from those networks because of the infinite cybersecurity risk, but also to put the onus on facilities to become IT experts. Hire people with IT managed service backgrounds, make them part of your team to both manage and protect those networks properly that protect and manage the building, okay? Because if facilities does not have proper IT capabilities, they're useless. They're flipping useless because all their systems now land on a network, and the network working is directly determinant of them making the building work. And if they have no competence in that, then they're useless. That's the way I think about it nowadays. So, so Brian and I.
Anto, let me add something here. I actually don't think there's far apart either. And I've been in this world of the gray area where it doesn't have to be either or, it could be and. And Brian, I'm going to add something to what you said. Even with the big companies who have enterprise IT teams, add this into your algorithm. They don't have the labor to create all these networks and maintain all of that in this labor market right now. Something we haven't even thought about. ExxonMobil wants, they can afford it all, but they don't have the people to get all these pipelines up. So that's something else to add to the algorithm these days. Why I believe there should be somewhat of a divergence, and it can converge somewhere else.
But Bill, we don't either. There's no magic pool that we have access to that those big companies don't.
Right.
It just like Scott said, suddenly overnight, we're going to take a bunch of trained mechanical and electrical contractors and make them IP experts. You would even struggle. So if you look at the pace of technology evolution, just in the space that we control, right? Just in the integrated systems, just in the applications, the use cases, the user stories, all of the things that we're trying to solve as MSIs. The network, to me, should just be the medium in which the data is transporting itself. I have so much to worry about implementing and creating sustainable use cases that actually make the buildings smarter, that make the tenant experience better, to make the operations experience better, to allow the FMs to actually manage these facilities. The last thing I want to have be my responsibility is also all of the vulnerability points of accessing. And that's, to me, where IT needs to step up and be that. And because if they don't, if for some reason the IT groups can't manage the networks, whether they're OT or IT at the big versions, I know there's certainly a segment of the market that needs that help from outsourced providers. But if we're talking about the biggest entities, if they can't do it, then they need to outsource it as well. And then back to Scott's point, if if a company or an entity is going to be experts at both the mechanical systems, electrical systems, and the systems, and maybe the interoperation of those systems and the sequences, and making a chiller plant work, which I would argue that still 50% of our people still can't make that work well. If they're going to be good at that and they're going to suddenly become great at IP and cybersecurity and all that stuff, fantastic. But that's a little too much of a unicorn of a company for me to think that that would scale. And I think it's going to take organizations that partner together to do this. And I do believe that it could be 100% outsourced to build to exactly the problem you're talking about. It's going to be easier for companies to scale services to provide to many companies than it will be for every enterprise company to build their own entity. I mean, this is part of the whole, microservices, shared services all over the world that we're seeing. So I don't think that's out of line. And unfortunately for all of you that think Scott and I don't agree on this, I think Scott's right. We're not very far apart on if we're apart at all. I think if you put us both in the same situation where it said, hey, here's the end user, here's the use case, and here's the problems that we're trying to solve, we're going to solve it in a very similar way. And I think, unfortunately, the way we approach this problem is our own experiences, which I primarily deal with the large corporate enterprise user because of where we're at. And Scott's primarily dealing with, as he said, all these contractors that are dealing with a lot of the smaller organizations. And not to say he's not dealing with some big ones, because he is, but I mean, the bulk of the problem I think he's trying to solve is for those companies that have an IT group that don't understand how to secure even their own business network, much less all these IoT devices. And to the other point, they might have had 3 IT people to manage 50 computers, and maybe they did some cell phone management if they even do that. And then we come in and add, 5,000 IP connected devices that they're just not ready for that scale of device. They don't understand the OSs. They don't, there's another thing when Mark put that, or whoever put is it time to legislate IoT? I read that very differently than Bill did. I was thinking about, do we actually make manufacturers conform to some standard on the IT perspective? Because so many of these devices, Scott already knocked Tritium, but I've knocked Tritium they did all this work to make their device strong from a cyber perspective. And then with 2 clicks, I can make it weak. Like those types of things, I think are dangerous for manufacturers to be able to build into their product, the ability for a contractor to take the cyber side of it and make what shipped strong weak within a couple clicks. And I just think that those are the kinds of things I think are going to be mission critical to help solve this problem. And it will take, the contractors, the manufacturers, and the facility companies and the IT companies in order to really make this work.
Any thoughts from the group here?
I have a question. As I've been listening to you guys kind of debate something a little bit here, my question is, what is the threat? What is the most likely thing here that we're guarding against from an OT standpoint, would you guys say? When you look out and see the landscape of threats out there and problems that can occur, what is the most common in our industry that we have to be aware of and protect ourselves from?
The threat from the internet connection to the BAS is where we see most of the calamity today.
So it's a backdoor kind of a problem.
It's typically somebody opened up that network on, in some way, shape, or form, not securely, and they left it open. And Niagara is like a beacon on the internet. If you leave an open port with Niagara, it's like a friggin' beacon out on the internet. They got it on these websites within minutes that it's sitting there. And then they don't go after Niagara, like they try to just find the network, and then they look for like the server on the network that's got the accounting software, and then they go in and hose that up. And that type of thing is what we've seen from a support standpoint.
Yeah, I mean, what Scott's talking about is that back door, like you say, Tracy, but we've also seen the front door attacks, and you don't hear about those because that it's not something that the companies that get attacked want to go out and publicize. You don't, and you only hear about the backdoor ones because it ends up with some sort of credit card breach, or user breach. But if you think about, hey, I just want to, deadhead some pumps and cause thousands of dollars worth of damage, or I want to wipe out entire databases because it was fun. We've seen those types of things happen. Fortunately, not to our clients, but those things do happen. That's a very much just, hey, I'm just a hacker who's looking for a little bit of fun today, and I'm going to just go mess with some stuff. Why'd they do it? I don't know, but it doesn't matter why they did it, just the fact that they did it. And if we're not applying the same level of scrutiny to the connectivity of OT systems as we are IT, then I think we open ourselves up to have more of that. And there's certainly things like water supply. When you get into industrial IoT, you get a lot more dangerous types things. If you end up into a water plant or something like that, you can really disrupt things, or even into the power grid, you can really disrupt things. So I think there's a lot of front door attack opportunity as well. And as we get more and more smart grid, we're going to have this stuff very top of mind.
These are all servers that are on site that are part of the OT system?
No, they don't have to be on site. Servers can be anywhere. We're talking about devices, right? So every device is a vulnerability, and it's access to those devices. So, Scott's talking about a Jace that's connected to the internet, but shoot, we've got cameras connected to the internet. We've got IoT sensors connected to the internet. We've got lots of different network infrastructure that's going in, whether it's LoRaWAN, or you might be using Wi-Fi, or you might be using some proprietary wireless technology that IT or even the best contractors don't know what's going on across that network, and they don't know the vulnerabilities. They're told by the vendors that the vulnerabilities don't exist, but what standardized testing is being done, and what standardized management's being done. I mean, there's just so many things when you're talking about the IoT and all of the different sensors and communication and potential vulnerabilities out there. So,
but to your point, I think, Tracy, you mentioned the question. There's not enough publicity around this as a threat. I don't see budgets being, shifted towards it for BAS systems, not like they should be, to Brian's point. I mean, I agree with everything he said about the threats, but I'm just saying the market, maybe some of the really big accounts do, but the typical account for a BAS system has zero budget for cybersecurity built into it right now, zero. Yeah. And until we hack or we do something to scare the piss out of them, I don't know if they're going to put any money in that barrel for us. So, that's the reality of it. As Bill can tell you, Bill fights this battle every day. I mean, there's just...
You confirmed something I was suspecting, which is, I think that the world generally sees the problem as a backdoor issue, the most prevalent. I agree with everything that Brian was saying. Also, it's just going to continue to get worse. But because it's a backdoor problem, it really falls under the purvey of IT, not OT. And they don't understand our systems very well. So, but the problem is, I think that people just don't secure the main connection point, right? The main access.
When we get involved with the FBI, we're one of like 100 industries that's, they're using to get into the back doors, if you may. Like, we're just one of hundreds. So the IT community, to them, we're just a little speck on the radar of problems. They have so many other issues
that's what
they're dealing with that are so much more complicated than what we're doing. Yeah. That's what the FBI is up against. They could care less about our BAS stuff so far from our now,
And I think one of the drivers that we are beginning to see, albeit slowly, but will heat up, is the legal ramifications that this is going to impact, whether it's some of the pitfalls, data protection, so forth and so on. And I think that's the onion that has yet to be peeled, but is beginning to be peeled. So,
well, either Brian or Scott mentioned, we're one really strong disaster away from changing our status in the world as far as
we had one, Tracy. We had one this summer down south in Atlanta. I mean, literally, people had to leave their homes, right? because they had no, wasn't it water? They shut the water down or?
Gas pipeline.
The gas, yeah. And I was talking to people who had to like leave their homes. So it has happened. Like Brian said, it's really the industrial's the most vulnerable where it points it out, but it's all the same. It's the same type of calamity at the
Jim,
end.
Jim, I think you were going to make a comment.
Yeah, and I was going to say to Brian's point about standards and rules, the industry has been working for years, as you all know, on security standards. But the thing I'd point out is that a lot of them are getting finished and getting implemented right now. So I think there'll be a number of interesting announcements at ASHRAE in terms of technology, especially on the BACnet side, in terms of security, which will be standardized and tested through BTL across the industry. So we are responding, but I do certainly agree with the point that there's no money for any of this right now. And you know, I have the slide I use in my DoD presentations that shows that the military spends $30 billion defending IT networks, and they spent about 8 million computers, and they have 2 billion OT nodes, and they're spending 150 million on that. Until we get a material shift, we're in trouble.
Well, and their number one answer to our industry is air gap, still to this day, right? Which doesn't take a lot of money to do that. So that money is going in other places that are cursory, I think, to our industry, but not.
So
not
yeah, so air gap is in a way where we started. It's kind of we started with separating it and unconverged, right? So it's basically the very first point that you made, Scott, is that we were basically that's where we started. I kind of want to move the conversation to the other sort of broad topic that we'd like to get your views on, Scott and Brian, which is really sort of the structure of the industry and the channel and how it's changing and the role of MSIs and all of that. You're both very strong supporters of the MSI concept. Can you give us your views in terms of where things are heading, and especially in next year?
You want to kick this one off, Brian?
Yeah, sure. I'll kick this one off. So I think where I think ultimately things will go, and where we're seeing things on the really big projects, is that MSI is its own contract. We've seen more and more it's direct to owner, but we've also seen direct to the general contractor. And the MSI is not responsible materially for any of the subsystems being integrated. And I think that's a critical requirement to really be an MSI, is not to have your best team starting up the chiller plant. They need to really be focused on the use cases and the integration and the data model. And I call it the commissioning of the data. You know, that's one of the biggest roles an MSI can do, besides actually, you know, creating, you know, some form of a digital twin around all the different things so that you can actually implement the use cases. But it's actually making sure the data you're getting is actually real data, that it's meaningful data, and that it can be used by other things, whether it's, you know, doing transformations in order to turn that data into some information, or feeding it off to analytics, or whatever else the use case might be. It's a big piece of an MSI's responsibility. And then the MSI is now, it used to be said that the MSI was commissioning the systems, and that's where I want to make, where I think a clarity is actually happening, is MSIs are commissioning the data coming through. The contractors within each one of those silos, controls contractor, lighting contractor, mechanical contractor, you know, security contractor, they commission their systems and the applications and all of the sequences. And so they're still using third-party commissioning firms, you know, as appropriate. And the MSI now works with all of those different police contractors as a partner to make sure that the systems are then delivered. And then what I see MSI is successfully doing is staying with that operator, whether it's a third-party operator company or an owner operator, for a good amount of time post-warranty, to make sure that not only are the systems and the use cases continuing to meet their needs, but also identifying new use cases and and really working with them long term. That's really where I see MSIs going. Contractors, I don't think controls contractors truly become MSIs unless they create an entire group that's the piece they're focused on. System integrators, they've been as long as I've been in this business, right? Been integrating things, whether it's via BACnet, LawnWorks, Modbus, whether it's HVAC, lighting, metering, whatever the different owner needed. So to say they're not integrators, as controls contractors aren't integrators, I think that would be a disservice to what a lot of controls contractors do. But I think there really is a separation between an MSI and, let's say, a system integrator.
Brian, is it fair to say that the MSI is also acting as an integrator, though, at the top level, where he's helping some of the service providers get access to the data on the site?
Absolutely. Yeah, and I think if we just go back to working with IT, making sure IT understands the needs of all these different connected systems, and then Roger, also you're right, extend into the business applications. Whether it's work order management, asset management, the MSI is really working with all of those different business groups, and that's why it's so important they stay on post-construction, post-implementation to really make sure that you get a lot of success out of all these connected systems. So it's a really big role, the MSI is, and it's important that the MSI understand the depth and the breadth of their role. Most MSIs today did come up from one discipline or another, so they're typically really strong in something. But we're seeing MSIs coming from different places, right? They could be coming from strong HVAC controls background, a strong lighting controls background, a strong IT background, maybe even an ERP background. We're starting to see MSIs enter the fold there. So I think there's just a lot there to do. And I think that when MSIs are the norm for projects rather than the only the Class A buildings use them, I think we'll see that MSI is a business in and of itself, and it's not necessarily, you won't need to do controls or lighting controls or ERPs as well. You'll be able to just focus on that integrated platform and integrated use cases.
Scott?
So the way I describe it now to people in the industry is I say, look, a BAS contractor is going to bring you graphics. An MSI is going to bring you a software platform. A BAS contractor is going to implement the mechanical system and put it on graphics for you. The MSI is going to develop a custom platform to fit your needs. Okay. And what we're seeing is the MSIs, frankly, are ruling the roost when it comes to the big accounts. So if you look at your Googles or your Amazons or your, the biggest companies out there that are looking to put these systems together in a usable format for whatever reason, they're hiring people like Brian. They're not hiring the Honeywell branch or the Johnson branch or any of those people. And I think that the platform wars are just starting. These big companies, they want Brian's business. So you're going to see him bring out a bunch of new clouds, bunch of new services. It's all built to break down that MSI platform and get them as the platform provider, right? That's what everybody wants to be now, is the control platform provider, the person who brought the software in and implemented it and has the licensing and the capability to help that owner over the life cycle of the building and the software needs that it has, right? That's the MSI. The MSI is a consultant first, and then they implement software. That's what they do. They implement software, okay? That's what their job is. They consult and they implement software. They're owner direct. They all go owner direct. It's all negotiated directly with the owner now, the real jobs. And again, they're bringing a platform in and they're working direct with the owner to customize the platform to meet their operational, their efficiency, whatever goals the owner has. It's the MSI's job to connect those building control systems to those goals, integrated, and then help them accomplish those goals through reporting and things like that. So MSI is super important to the success of this industry in the future. And people like Brian are doing a great job of pushing the envelope and frankly, keeping all these big companies honest, because they can't compete with the MSIs today. And it's because people like Brian are flexible. They'll do what the owner wants. They'll bring in whatever software they want. He's got developers. He's got all sorts of people on staff that can work with the owner to help them accomplish their goals. That's what an MSI is. A BAS contractor, we're still going to have them. We're still going to have them. Wham, bam, thank you, ma'am. We need them. Prices need to be low. And the MSI is the one who provides that platform that the BAS connects into, right? That type of thinking. So that's the way I look at it, Anto.
I think also here we're seeing it in Europe where the REITs are, you're quite right, using the MSI as a consultant and also making sure what gets implemented is what they are asking for, because the mechanical contractor and the actual consultant on the job aren't quite there yet. That's
Yeah.
the heads are not there. So the MSI is actually working directly for the REITs to actually ensure they get what they want.
And one more thing, the reality is the owners have requests of the building and the software within that none of our manufacturers are even close to having. So Brian and people like him have to bring additional software in outside of the industry to accomplish the goals of the end users. So, you know, again, our industry, and you look at the manufacturers who serve it, who are building these IP products, look at the marketing team and ask them, how many IT experts do you have on the IT, you know, on this team developing this IP product? And what you're going to find is they have none. They got like one person that they all share. So the lack of competence from the manufacturers is why the MSIs are so important to the industry right now, because somebody's got to mix it all together for the end user to make the buildings look good.
So let me ask you guys this question. So you both have kind of given your perspectives. Is a MSI responsibility continuous commissioning as well?
Well, they're so good at it. They just write software that does it for the owner. And their software reports the continuous commissioning, right? They don't need to sit there and babysit a job. They're software people. I mean, write the sequence, they'll write a code, they'll leave it there and tell you if it falls out of commission, you know. Would you agree, Brian?
So yeah, I think that is correct. So the MSI, a big value add is the ability to either oversee or self-implement that continuous commissioning platform, the analytics platform. And yeah, you write it per every single sequence. Unfortunately, at every building is a little bit different. However, the rule sets, you know, for all of these systems are easily modified to match. And then yeah, there's no way at scale you could have a person doing this at all these projects. That's insane. That's a definite big piece of that platform. And it's not just continuous commissioning of the mechanical systems, it's all the systems, it's the networks, it's understanding when a camera is getting really noisy on a network, right? I mean, there's lots of things that go into that continuous commissioning. And that's why when I talked about commissioning the data, that's one of the things that platform is going to be doing, is constantly looking at the data coming through from all these different connected things and making sure that the data looks reasonable. And you don't do that by a person sitting there staring at a screen or even a knock.
Would you guys agree that that's really a contractual kind of an arrangement, whether it's initial commissioning and startup or continuous commissioning?
Yeah.
And the evolution I kind of see in the role of an MSI is, you know, we've talked a lot about bringing more and more IT smarts into our world, but more and more data analytics into our world is where the MSI role is going. Once you get that data, it's validated, it's there, then it becomes a question of what do you do with that data? And, you know, there are people on the screen that have products that will help you figure out what to do with that data. So there's a secondary effort that anyone who is using an MSI properly really can take advantage of, which is what are the right tools now to apply to my data that my BAS system has provided into this whole thing? What can I do with that, right? So it's really evolving a lot and maturing very quickly in terms of that role. And one of the things that I find interesting is people like Brian and Scott that do this for a living is you have domain expertise and your feet in a couple of different worlds that make some of this possible to pull all this together. So that's what what I think is the really interesting thing that's going on in our industry right now, more than almost anything else.
Question I've got, and Brian, you alluded to post-installation support for the owner or owner-operator, is how do you price this? Because historically, all the contracting was set up at the time when the job bid. But if you're going to be doing post-installation improvements, if you will, optimization, I know you're looking to get a contract directly with the owner, but you can't anticipate what that bill is going to look like. So what's your answer to the pricing for the MSI?
I actually think not only can you anticipate it, you have to in order to scale it. We have definitely set up a pricing model for the post-construction services. So one thing that's true in a construction contract is we're going to be there for the warranty period no matter what.
Sure.
And so a big part of that warranty period is being very active in the warranty period, which is another thing that is a little bit transformative for our industry. Warranty period, we run and we hope nobody calls us and the warranty period ends and nothing's called us back. We want to transform that. We want to be very active during the warranty period and show them that not only are the tools that we've installed and implemented continuously working, but to Scott's point about writing software, a big problem is you start the job up in the winter and the systems don't work very well in the summer, right? Well, if you've got those rules running, then you're finding those things actively. If you're proactively doing that, then when the warranty period's over and you've been active with the client that whole time, having them continue that service for a fee, which is always generally part of our, either it's part of our original proposal or it's part of our warranty discussions around, hey, here's what we're doing. Here's, hopefully you're happy with the service and now you carry it forward. It becomes instrumental. If we treat it like we've always treated construction, which is, I've been in the construction world a long time, want to get off the job as quickly as possible and get the hell out and get to the next one. If that's our mentality, we'll never succeed as an MSI, right? MSI has got to be there. And I like to say, born from distribution, Scott's a distributor. He never wants a client to disappear. When we were in distribution, we never wanted a client to disappear. And we've kind of taken that same mentality into our world as an MSI. That's a client forever, not a client for today or for the next 4 months. And so if you take that philosophy in, it becomes a whole lot easier to be talking about how that engagement looks long-term. And it's also very easy to give them those fees. So you want a consultation per month, here's what that fee is going to be. Because a lot of these people, I always say analytics isn't, I do believe that analytics has to be used a lot more by service providers. I don't believe analytics is the thing we should be selling end users. They're not looking for analytics, they're looking for results. SkySpark, we're an avid user of SkySpark and we love using SkySpark to help us, in their terms, find what matters. And so that we can actually fix what matters for the end user, because the results are what they're looking for. SkySpark is really the tool that we can use to actually implement that. And when we show them that, and we kind of get away from how much am I paying per point or how much am I paying per square foot or any of that, but we're actually demonstrating for them that it's a continuous benefit. It's much easier to get across the line with whatever the fee may be.
By the way, Brian, you were at Realcomm. We heard clearly there the big JLLs of the world and so forth want to outsource this to you guys. They want to subscribe to it and they want to have a relationship for a long, long time. It's made that very clear.
So we're getting to the top of the hour, and in fact, we need to wrap. So maybe I can ask Scott and Brian what they're looking forward to most in 2022 next year. We can wrap with that as hopefully an upbeat comment from you two.
Don't put them in a box, Anto.
They are in a box.
Setting it up? You're setting up our comments?
I'm setting up an expectation.
Listen, guys, we're on a rocket ship here into this IT universe. you know, people can agree, disagree, whatever they want. We're in it. Okay. We're all in it. We should all embrace it. Let's all dive in. Let's not be scared. And here's what we found with these jobs now that have gone in. Guess what? The throughput of Ethernet versus serial is like 1,000,000 times more. So for you data people, you people who really want to make buildings smart, guess what? We just unlocked it for you. We now can put the plumbing in to move the data that you actually need to make these buildings really smart. First time in history at scale where this will happen. So now people who like to play with data, have fun. You can rethink every paradigm in the building, because guess what? We can do it now. We can do it all for you at a speed that makes it worthwhile. I mean, it's incredible the amount of data we can move, and we should take advantage of it as an industry and truly make buildings a lot smarter. So that's my thing.
That's wonderful. Brian?
Yeah, for me, I'm excited about partnerships, and it's partnerships that I think are what people traditionally would have thought would be impossible. So where companies like us, who used to be competitors at the enterprise BMS level and still are in some ways, will start to partner as an MSI partner for big commercial contractors who don't want to or haven't been able to scale up the MSI side of their business, but they're still very, very good at doing controls at scale, and partnering with those kind of companies. I also see a lot of partners with adjacent systems, especially when we're talking about the grid. I think a ton of stuff is going to start opening up with respect to the grid and what we've been talking about for over a decade. We're starting to actually see companies out there that are a lot easier and to work with, and are anxious to work with companies like ours who can actually help them on the demand side of the world, and not just in traditional demand response type things, but active demand management all the time. So I'm pretty excited about all the different areas of interest that are going to push this industry, and we're now starting to become interesting to a lot bigger talent pool, which is also really exciting.
So amazing conversation, phenomenal discussion, as Greg put in the chat. So thank you very much, Scott and Brian.
Thank you, guys.
This is wonderful. Video of this will be up tomorrow. Thank you for being here, for all the attendees to be here, and we'll see you next Monday. So thank you all.
Okay.
Thanks.
Thanks, Brian. Thanks, Scott. It was great.
Bye. Bye now.